we'll get started for the evening. So thanks to everybody for joining us this evening for the second of our stream that is all about engaging your members, the satisfaction of your members, and communication with your members in order to increase the renewals rate at your club. So to retain those members that you worked so hard to get in the first place and make sure that they are satisfied and happy club members, to keep your numbers up. But also, we all know that word of mouth is a fantastic marketing tool, and if your members are happy, then they'll be telling other people. So I'm just going to cover a few parts of the tech before we introduce ourselves and then crack on with this evening's topic. So this evening you're going to have mostly webcam of myself and Lisa and our guests, along with the slides that go along with it, and as I said, some really interesting guests that are joining us this evening. You're going to have your microphone muted throughout the whole presentation, and so if you do have questions, please use the question box, and we've got Vicky Lenz monitoring that for us as we go through the evening, and she'll send some answers to you. But equally, there'll be time to pose those questions at the end, which Vicky will do for you. And finally, this session is being recorded, so you know, we will do our best to make it as good as possible for you, but you can also use it to send it out to other committee members if you find there was anything particularly useful in it for you, or if you do have to log off halfway through, you can catch up at a later stage. So that question box is clearly marked on the screen there for you by the arrow. You can also make your screen full size with the top arrow there in the top right hand corner, which we are aware some of the slides look quite small if you don't do that. So you can maximize your screen using those arrows in the top right corner and use the question function if you'd like to pose a question, which, as I say, Vicky will kind of pose those to us at the right moment. So without further ado, over to Lisa to introduce this evening.
Thanks, Rob. Hi, everyone. Hopefully you will recognize us from last week. Like Rob said, this is the second webinar. We are going to look at how to retain your members through effective engagement. Last week we looked at the satisfaction, so this week we're going to look at engagement. The aims for tonight, we want you guys to understand the insight on the churn rate that we have received through the membership census this year. We're going to explore engagement opportunities through good practice examples. We have some really interesting case studies for you tonight. And we're also going to consider how effective engagement may impact renewal numbers, which we all understand that the renewals are coming up. So hopefully from the case studies you will have gained some valuable insights in terms of what you could bring back to your club. Agenda, we're going to recap from last week, and then we're going to look at the leavers and joiners, just a bit of insight Rob's going to chat about. Straight into the case study, so we have 4 good case studies for you tonight. And then we're just going to look at some of the thoughts that you've gained from tonight and how to kind of bring that over into next week's webinar. Okay, so what have we learned so far? So recap from last week that we were looking at the satisfaction. Understanding your members is key. We understand every member will be different, but in terms of understanding their needs and values is key, obviously for the likes of membership retention and renewals. What matters most to members from the satisfaction survey, we learned that approachability, atmosphere, feeling valued was huge, getting advice and communication. So just that feeling welcomed within the club and feeling part of the club was extremely important to members. We understand that adapting is key and making that effort, whether it's a huge effort or a very small effort, to change or to adapt, it's recognized and it's rewarded through member satisfaction and renewal.
So if we take a look at the leavers over the last 5 years, so this is the percentage of each club that have left the club within the region. So the leavers that you really have worked hard to get in the first place and really don't want to leave. So as you can see across the country until this year, it was a really mixed bag. Some regions going up and down, some have steady increase of leavers, which is really not good, and you know, an absolute mixed bag. But as won't be a surprise to anybody to see that this year the number of leavers has shot in, you know, colossally. The only region that's not true in is actually Lisa's Northern Irish region, where their number of leavers hasn't been as badly affected. That could be because all of those clubs renew in January, and so what they might see is a knock-on of that next year, or it could just be that they did something differently. And I know from chatting with Lisa that actually one of the things that has happened is they've struggled to get new joiners. So that is, you know, it's a mixed bag picture until this year, and then this year we've obviously got the effects of COVID on that. But even if you take out this year, you can see that no region was regularly decreasing the number of leavers in the region. So this is just from the southwest. You can see that joiners and leavers badly affected, and unfortunately the picture across the whole country is very similar. And this isn't going to do any club any good. You know, it's bad financially, it's bad for the atmosphere in the club, and it's also going to make everybody struggle. Now, this year's a totally unique situation, obviously, and you can see from the joiners in previous years that everything was going in the right direction, and that's pretty true across the whole of the UK. So we need to get back to where we were, and what we're going to look at this evening is some engagement ideas that, as we mentioned earlier, will hopefully keep your present members, and through word of mouth marketing, potentially encourage new members as well. So with that said, we really want tonight to be all about the case studies. We could tell you what we think makes a really good club and what engages members, but far better would be to hear from 4 fantastic clubs who have been working, and individuals from clubs who know firsthand what they're doing. So we've got 4 different case studies for you, kind of following through from the initial joining of a club through a number of different sectors in clubs, and finishing up with a club that's doing a number of different things to engage their members. So we'll pass over to Lisa, who's going to have a chat with Lara about that.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, so we're going to look at our first case study in terms of engaging new members. It's something that I think our clubs are really, really good at. We're good at engaging new participation opportunities and engaging with kind of new people that are new to sailing as well. So what we're going to look at is we're going to listen from Lara. Lara is a new club member from last year, and a new participant to sailing. Lara, first question, how and why sailing?
So I'd always had sort of an ambition to try sailing, but I had it in my head that it was really expensive, if I'm honest, you know, sort of not something I could maybe get into. And it wasn't obvious where to go. And then a friend of mine who is a keen sailor had come across the WOW project. So I looked up, and they were running it in Donaghadee Sailing Club, which isn't too far away from me. And I took part in that. And then on the last day, a lady came up to me, and her name was Jennifer. And she said there was the first ever Women's on Water Festival happening the week after. And I'd signed up to it because I kind of was really interested by that stage. The 6 weeks, was it 4 or 6 weeks? I just loved it, being on the water, and I wanted to know how I could keep doing it. And we decided we'd go down together, and we had an amazing day. There was lots of activities as part of the festival, and then we had a big meal that night. There was prizes and stuff. And we were sitting around the dinner table, and we're like, okay, how do we do this? And Jennifer was like, right, we'll just go to the club, we'll steal a boat, we'll do something, and we'll get out in the water. And so that was a Saturday. So the Sunday we went, we took the club boat, and we're now sailing GP14. She actually bought a boat, and we were due to sail in the World Championships in Skerries, but then obviously that's been cancelled. So she helms, I crew. She'd been crewing for about 3 years, so it's a new experience, but it's, yeah, I love it. And we're still very much together doing that now. So that's how I got in.
And I think that clubs can take from that is your initial engagement was obviously before the sailing was chatting to your friend to get you involved in it, but then straight away it was connecting with another club member, and it was that social aspect that kind of helped your engagement with the club to then become a member. How important do you think that is for clubs to be that welcoming person? Really, they would need volunteers that could do that.
Yeah, I think it's not even like that it has to be an official volunteer. I think you have to have an environment within your club that communication is key. Like you were saying earlier, making it welcoming, making people feel like they're part of the club. I mean, I take you for an example. I've gone from someone who didn't sail at all to my family now at Ards. And because of the way Ards is, we have the boathouse and the slipways private, so we have access. My partner ended up buying a Fox Cub at the start of lockdown, which he's now doing up, and there's a wealth of knowledge there. But my whole family now come, and the kids go. We have a GP14 fleet, which I race with, but then we have a leisure fleet. For example, I take my kids out, and my son came out with me, and Michael, one of our, he's our Commodore, turned around and he said, "Cash, you own this boat. You're a member of this club. You own this boat. This boat is yours." So it's that welcoming feeling, made to be feeling part of something. In our club, we get out on the water any chance we get. If we can't go out racing in the dinghies, we'll go out in something else. Or even some days we'll just go swimming, you know, with COVID and the rules and things. It's just about being there. And we all chip in to help do up the club, and we spend time there. I mean, it doesn't matter what time of the day you go, there'll be someone pottering about doing stuff. And it's that feeling that it's a lived in club. And we have a very active WhatsApp group. We have a Stephanie, who's the women's officer. We have a separate group, and we set up stuff. I'm going to be training. We organise training during the winter so that we can keep our fitness up, because COVID's obviously impacting us. Yeah, so it's that communication is key. And also sort of you get what I think is a great example we do at Ards really well, is you can have a complete newbie come in. A friend, Rachel, who's a colleague of mine at the club, she came in kayaking, but now she's out racing in the GPs with like Gold Fleet sailors who are taking her on board, and she's crewing for them. And that sort of official buddy system, but just experienced sailors being willing to take new members on and share their, you know, their wealth of knowledge with them, so that, you know, that's how you keep a club alive. You know, you bring in people and make them feel welcome.
Brilliant. And in terms of, we understand from the satisfaction survey that kind of new members up to 2 years, their satisfaction is quite high, which we do see from you, Lara. Your motivation and the engagement with the club's fantastic. But from the satisfaction survey, we know that from 2 years, kind of satisfaction may drop slightly. And in terms of keeping you, Lara, as a member of your club, how would the club meet your needs? Like, what further things could they provide, or are they doing enough at this minute in terms of offering that variety of activities? And then obviously with the communication, is there other ways that they could potentially support your journey as such?
Yeah, I think if you're going to bring new people into sailing, it is expensive. You know, it can be expensive. Not everybody can just buy a boat. So I think there's two things. You have to be able to be willing to have people there who can take on crew, possibly, or be, you know, that way, but also make sure you have club boats there, Picos, whatever it is, the starter, you know, that you need, that, and you'd be willing to let members access them, but also tell them, let people know, because it's all very well having club boats, but if you don't know as a new member that you can access those club boats, or you don't have someone there willing to show you how to use them, then it's just going to lay there. I don't know, there's probably lots of clubs that have really nice club boats and nobody's using them if they don't know. So I think it's really important that you have the equipment and then that willingness to engage and instruct people. Sometimes that comes to skill training, you know, that make sure that your club maybe has all the training people there that can instruct to that level, and that engagement. And then there's the social aspect as well, keep that going. But like I say, it's so important. I think the biggest thing, Andy, our member, who's Lee's our member, he's like, it's about having fun in the water. get in the water whatever way you can. So whether you expand and you maybe do kayaking, invite windsurfers, whatever, you know, keep your club alive by engaging people in different activities and providing that community space. Use the club for, you know, for everything, you know, bring people in, do your training there, let people know that they can train through the year, make them aware of when there's racing, and then support them if they want to go. And, you know, like we want to, Jennifer and I obviously hoping to get to Skerries next year, all being well, but we learn by being able to race and get shouted at sometimes on the water, you know, but just that, put things on that people can take part in and be willing to, like, that we have our leisure. One of the biggest, it was such a great thing when I found out, oh, we don't just have to race the dinghy, we can go out and just have the crack on the water and go out for the day and learn how to sail larger yachts and stuff, but just for the pleasure of it as well. And so I think you've got those two, it goes back to communication and involving, I think communication and inclusion.
And I think that's what, like, I'm getting from you as a new member, in terms of you're so curious, you want to learn more. So it's making clubs kind of having that opportunity for you to learn more, whether it's boat maintenance, just rigging workshops, things like that, like added extras that will really, really help new members kind of engage with the club and obviously stick with the club.
Well, I think a healthy club is doing those things anyway. A good club should be running maintenance and things anyway, running first aid every year, getting those sort of trainings going. That should be just standard every year, that people then can come on board and take part.
Brilliant. Lara, thank you so much. Your enthusiasm is just, it's brilliant, and I hope that continues on, and it will be good to kind of chat further with you about your sailing journey. We're going now to pass on to Rob, who's going to chat to our next case study.
Thanks, Lara, and thanks, Lisa. Really great to see how people are joining clubs and how they feel when they're joining clubs. Next up, we're going to be chatting to Steve and Sue from the Poole Yacht Club in Poole, obviously. So Steve is the laser commodore, the laser class captain. Got a promotion there, Steve. The laser class captain at Poole, and Sue is a new racer to the laser fleet in Poole as well. So thanks both of you for joining us. It's fair to say that Poole this year have been listening to their laser sailors and then adapting what you're doing and trying some you know, what could be seen as quite new things. It's definitely brave things for the club that you're in. It's unseen before in your club, so really good. Steve, do you want to just give us a little update on kind of what changes you've made and how you've been listening to the fleet? Okay, so we just give you, or if I just give you a quick background of what's been happening over the last few years. If you turn the clock back a year for today, usual club facilities, we would go out racing on a Thursday night, 6:20 start. The leaders would all be going around the cans, and by about 7:30, the leaders would be coming in, and the ones at the back would be coming in probably about 8:30, 9 o'clock, and by that time, us leaders would have all been finished. Now, it's very difficult to please everybody, but we spent quite a lot of time talking to everybody, getting their feedback to see what they wanted. And last year we muted the idea of having smaller racing, but of course come March 2020 this year, COVID came along, it all stopped, but it gave us an opportunity to create a WhatsApp group. A few of us went out racing, and we just did very short racing, 10-minute racing, windward leeward courses. Word got around that we were doing this, and it started to grow. And where we would usually have about 10 people racing around the cans, we were starting to get 20, 25 people racing, and they kept coming back for more and more. Now, every time we were out there racing, we would continue to listen to the whole of the fleet to see what they wanted. So where we started at windward leeward courses, we then adapted that to put in a wing marker, like a triangle, and it became sausage and triangle. Then we started again to listen to everybody, because some of the people at the back were concerned about coming through the fleet.
And again, it's all down to communication, listening to what these people want, and then adapting what we're doing. So we then decided to do trapsodial courses, box courses basically. But again, we've kept the racing to probably about 10 to 15 minutes each race. And what it's done is it meant the people at the back have actually been able to keep up with the ones at the front, not obviously overtaking them, but at the, I think from the person at the front to the person at the back in the racing is about a minute to 2 minutes difference. Now, one of the things that the feedback we had originally was that the people at the back were so discouraged by the fact that they were so far behind, they didn't know where they were going, and it became boring. And if you don't move with the times, you will lose these people, and that's what we kind of felt we were happening. But this year, because we're doing short racing, 5 or 6 races in an evening, people are loving it. Everybody's loving it, and it's keeping everybody active, from the ones at the front, where you're having 6 or 7 people going around the top boys or the lure buoy, to the ones at the back who are realizing that they're actually quite close to the middle part of the fleet, and they can see how to get better. And so that's what we've done, and it's worked very, very well. And retention levels for the racing, if last year when we were racing 10 to 15 people, I'll be very happy with. If I get less than 20 now, I'll start crying, because we want more than the 20. There's no reason why our club can't have 35 people racing at any one time, because we found a formula for the lasers that is working. But that's all down to listening to what your sailors want and listening to the people at the back as well as the ones at the front. And don't assume as a class captain you think you know what people want, because you'll start to realize what you think is right is not actually what the people actually want. So the key to this, as Lara was saying earlier, is communication, and it's so important to talk to everybody. And that's what we've done, and we've seemed to have hit on a winning formula, and we will keep amending it as we go along.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And so, Sue, you learnt to sail at the club, having volunteered for the youth section, and because your son was sailing there, and so then you went and learnt and got a laser, and have kind of been enticed into this. So this truly has increased your engagement at the club. Can you kind of tell us a bit about what that was that drew you into it, and what it's doing for other members, and why these people are joining, and how you feel it's affecting the fleet itself? Is it changing the dynamic in the fleet, the type of people, for example?
Yeah, as you said, I was helping volunteering with the children's sailing, and I just happened to mention to one of the other people that was helping, that I was so impressed with the little children in their Optimists whizzing around, and I just said, I'd love to know what they're doing and how they do it. I did windsurfing in my teens into my early 20s, but to be honest, I never really knew where the wind was coming from. I just used to watch everybody else, and that was it. But so anyway, there was a group was started, and some of us mums were the first weekend that we did it. And that was in the November, and then in the April we started properly having lessons, and then we doubled up in the fevers, which was hilarious. We spent most of our time in the water, and then gradually a lot of our children had gone into lasers, and so we started using the children's lasers, and really that's how we got into the laser thing. We did have coaching from a couple of different people, but we got to a point where the club was starting to have other people wanting to learn, and we actually knew the basics, so we kind of had to move on, which is where Steve came in and took us under his wing, and then we just went from there, really. But for me personally, I discovered that I was quite competitive, and I just wanted to get better, and I just really enjoy it, and the help and encouragement from the laser group was really good. And it just became more and more enjoyable, and the confidence grew. And then because I was talking to other people, and a lot of them saying, oh, I couldn't race, and I said, but it's fine, we're always at the back, but we're fine. But when Steve and some others started introducing this year, the quick fire racing, that was just a different ball game, and it just makes me smile so much. It's just great fun. Everybody's involved, and you are literally a minute and a half behind the more accomplished sailors, so you don't come away thinking, oh, that was dull or what have you. It's really good. It's really gets you going. And so from that, there's more and more of us now that are joining in, and each week we learn something new, and it's great. It's really good.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. That's fantastic. And it's really obvious how the change of format has encouraged more people, by the sounds of it, to be engaged in the club on a regular basis. It would have been very easy for you to kind of your interest to dwindle potentially, but this has really grabbed you and pulled you into the club even further, which is fantastic. Steve,
I think
sorry, go on, Sue.
I was going to say, for me personally, I would have just carried on doing it, but I think there was a number in my group that actually they were getting fed up, and they, were sort of saying, oh, they don't think they'll bother or won't, because nobody was available to take them around the islands in the harbour, and they didn't feel comfortable enough going out on their own, and so they didn't bother because they didn't want to race with all the connotations that came with it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And yeah, it's spot on. It sounds exactly like, you've stopped some members potentially leaving there with this change of format. Steve, it's obvious it's engaging people at the back of the fleet and maybe newcomers to the fleet. How about the people at the front? Are they a bit fed up with only having 15-minute races? How does it make them feel?
Well, I think it's completely the opposite, because with a 15-minute race, the good guys, they know that it's all on the start line, and if you get a good start, then you're likely to be up the top. So we get 5 starts every Thursday night or every Monday night. You're also finding that when you get to the top mark, instead of if you have a long course, the leaders will get there within sort of 30 seconds of each other, but because the courses are so short, what we're finding is that you'll have 6 or 7 people all trying to go around the mark at the same time. Now, those ones at the front, the front of the fleet, they're used to that sort of thing if they go off to do events around the country, so they're used to it, and it's all good training. So it's had a really good effect on those at the front, because they are racing against 6 or 7 people instead of probably just racing against themselves if they were doing round the cans long courses. So from a positive point of view, everybody has benefited from this. Some of the things that people in the middle of the fleet, they're starting to get a lot closer to the ones at the front of the fleet. Now, what they don't realise is that to get to that person at the front is very, very hard, but it gives you that sense of, I can do this, I'm not that far behind. As Sue said just a minute ago, the people right at the back, they were getting disheartened and they were leaving. And the amount of times I tried to talk them into sailing and racing, and you could see they just weren't interested. But recently, one of the girls came up to me, she said, that's the best time I've had on the water. And you think, what a remarkable thing to say, from going on, I hate racing, to now, that was great fun. And they're out again. So it really has worked. So certainly the guys at the front, they're loving it because it's 5 races and they're racing against certainly people of their ability, very, very close. And then again, the ones at the back don't feel like they're being left behind because it is only a minute or 2 minutes, and then we start again. So we can only last an hour. We just get knackered after that, and then we're back in again. So, yes,
that's brilliant. So if you had to summarise quickly, kind of what this change has done and what the laser fleet are doing, and how that makes you feel and the other people in the class. How does it make you feel about your club? What's it doing for your engagement and your?
Well, if I could describe right from the beginning, even driving down from home down to the club, my smile gets bigger and bigger, and I can't wait to get in there. And then also just seeing everybody down there socially, meeting other people, encouraging new people to join in as well. And that's really great when you see somebody new and you go over and say hello and what have you. It has made a huge difference. And also, I was really delighted, but asked to be the vice captain. And for me, to be the lower end of the fleet, if you like. It was amazing, and so I'm really proud of that. But also, I think it sends out a signal that anyone can do it. You know, it doesn't matter whether you started last year or 30 years ago. Anybody can do it, and you'll just fly, and it's just great. It's just really great.
Lovely. Well, thanks to both of you. It's really obvious that the stuff you're doing there is going to encourage people to renew their membership at your sailing club, and hopefully some other people can take some ideas away from that. So thanks, Steve and Sue, for your time this evening. Next up, we're going back to Lisa and over to a club in Northern Ireland. So over to you guys.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, moving back to Northern Ireland. Obviously, we have kind of chatted about members and getting members engaged and involved, but another huge important part of our clubs are volunteers. And kind of one of the clubs that we know that do it quite well and engage with their volunteers quite well are East Down Yacht Club. You actually have kind of double the experience with Gordon. Gordon is the Commodore for East Down Yacht Club, but he is also our development officer here in Northern Ireland. So Gordon will just go straight into it in terms of planning for next year. Why do you think clubs should plan as normal?
I think it's really important to keep everyone thinking positively about next year. It's too easy to sit back and say, oh, well, we're not sure what it's going to be like, and therefore we'll just do nothing. If we plan a full calendar, and then we can, if we need to, change it later. So we're making decisions as normal, and we're looking at what is possible now, but also we're looking at what can be done, whether restrictions ease or whether they tighten. So we're sort of thinking of a menu of events and things that can be done with possible dates, which it can all be firmed up later. But we're planning whether it's going to go ahead or whether it's going to stop, or whether it's going to be uncertain. We just have to go for it as normal. So the other thing we've done this year at East Down is to take on an open event, the organisation of an open event early next season. You could also think about maybe running early courses, but our reasoning here is to keep everyone focused over the winter months and everyone working towards planning these events, whether the event ends up happening or not. But what we are doing is making sure members know about this and know how they can be involved or how they can help, because it's going to keep them engaged through the winter also, and hopefully they'll realise that there is something really positive going to happen early next year.
Brilliant. And in terms of the projects and events that you are kind of putting in your calendar, how is the planning and organising of that going to impact your volunteers?
Well, we're hoping it will challenge everyone and engage them, but do it for the good of the club. And it's going to keep them talking to each other, whether it's on Zoom or in real life. But it's going to reassure them that there is life in the club and that life goes on. It may also give them a reason to remain a volunteer or to remain a member, or if nothing else, to encourage others to join or to remain.
Yeah, and I think that is definitely, if you guys can see the screen, we realised 47% of members, they want to contribute more to the club, but there are barriers there. And I think the likes of the way, Gordon, you're talking about kind of new projects and new planning opportunities, the likes of volunteer specific recruitment, how important is that?
Well, it's really important, rather than just saying we would like you to volunteer this year at the club, to ask them to do a specific job. Would you mind making a loaf of sandwiches, or would you mind working behind the bar next Wednesday night, or driving the rib? It's much more manageable and much easier for a person to say yes or no to than committing to something when they don't really know what's involved or when it starts and when it's going to stop. So giving them a definite role is so much better.
Yeah, I think it's extremely important, and I think one of the things that East Down Yacht Club, they do quite well, if you ever searching on social media, check out their Facebook page. It's on the slide here, you'll see I took a screenshot, and it's basically East Down, I don't know if it's you, Gordon, that's in charge of it, but you're thanking your volunteers, and not just a generic thank you volunteers, it's you're splitting them down into their roles. And in terms of keeping your volunteers engaged, do you think this will have a significant impact on your membership renewals?
I would say definitely yes. I mean, a member who hears nothing might think that there's nothing happening or nothing planned, but we don't want people thinking that about our club. So maybe last year some people felt that they got reduced value for money, but we need to tell them that next year will be very different, that they will have the choice. They all have the choice to renew or not, and we can't assume that they're going to renew. So we've got to give them lots to plan for and lots to look forward to.
Yeah, and I think I would work quite closely with Gordon in terms of our sporting clubs and club development, and I think we are looking at further going into the likes of volunteer engagement through volunteer audits and things. And Gordon, I know yourself obviously as a volunteer is going to be key in terms of supporting our clubs and their volunteers throughout. Thank you so much for that information, and hopefully clubs will have gained a good bit of knowledge from that. Going to pass back to Rob on our last case study.
Great, thanks Lisa, and thanks Gordon. So our last case study, you know, and we've followed through here from a new member to some stuff that's happening in racing to some volunteering and engaging our members all the way through these. Our last case study is with Mike, the Commodore from X Sailing Club. Welcome, Mike. X, it's fair to say, have got a pretty broad offer when it comes to their members, and not all of the normal, not all the things you might expect. So I think we're going to get a bit of a lowdown from Mike on some of those to start with, but also just think about how it is engaging their members throughout their journey in the club, so that when their pathway in one section comes to an end, whether that be training or racing or cruising, and they feel like doing something else, they're not leaving the club, they're just moving to a different part of the club, if you like. And many of X's members are parts of all sorts of exciting activities at the club, aren't they, Mike? So tell us a little bit about what happens at your club.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. They certainly are. I'll state a few of the obvious ones just to set the scene. We do go dinghy sailing, we do go dinghy cruising, we go cruiser racing, and we go cruiser cruising. And we have kayaks, we have paddle boarding. I mean, that paddle boarding took off absolutely berserk this summer. It was a great summer. When people could get out, they were down there paddle boarding. We've got an art group, some spectacular art is produced by our art group. We've got sailability, which brings people in to help others to get out on the water, which is greatly supported. We've got a group of people that play pool. We've got 2 Skittles teams. We've got people to go biking. Obviously, we do the training on the water and in the classroom. We've got a book club. We had a chess club that was making moves to start up at the beginning of the year, excuse the pun. Unfortunately, COVID's put that on hold at the moment. We've got a small group of people that belong to a breakfast club. So some of these groups might just be 4 or 5 people. Some of them are a lot bigger. Obviously, we've got boat hire with our training boats. And we have a ukulele group that meet normally on a Friday afternoon. We're looking forward to hearing them play again as we're busying ourselves around our boats when we can get back to normality. And it leads me on to some of the other things that we've done that help show that we, as I like to promote, where can we make something better? What can we do? What can we add to what we're doing to make it better? And 2 examples of that over recent years is that, like all sailing clubs in the Northern Hemisphere, as we get into the autumn, the nights draw in and makes it difficult for safety purposes to be out on the water. So our cruisers would end their cruiser racing around September time. So our cruiser captain came up with the idea of the Silver Series. So it meant we shifted the time frame to a different part of the day, so they would go out racing at 3 or 4 o'clock to get the best of the tide, still get a good race in, actually come back in daylight, which made you feel you've gone back into the summer. Go to the bar and restaurant, great buzz in the building. That would bring people down who didn't go out on a boat but wanted to be part of something where something was happening. So they'd come along and have a meal and join in the fun. That's just an example. Another example in the winter months with the bar and catering side of things, we wanted to renew our wine choice options. So instead of just getting a few people standing at the bar trying a few wines out, our bar and catering manager put on a spread, wine and cheese evening, and we chose the wines, we voted on them. We had an expert come to talk to us about the wines, and we did the same thing with gin a few weeks later. So seize an opportunity and magnify it is the message there. And it's proved really well.
Yeah, great. And it's fair to say, though, nobody joins ex-sailing club to play the ukulele or go bike riding. So kind of why does it matter? Why is it worth the members making that effort to make those things happen?
Well, I think of some of the members, and I've got it's a chap I've known for a very long time. He does virtually everything at the club. He's on the management committee. He's been on the training things that we've done. One of our club members does RYA training courses and been off around halfway around Britain and back a few years ago. Went off to the Baltic. He's done some of those trips. He goes cruiser racing, cruiser sailing, does the same in dinghies, kayaking, sailability. And the only thing I need to buy him now, Rob, is a ukulele, so he'll have the full set. Yeah. So you've got people who just, you've got people that in one sense just milling around from different things that they can do. So that just works brilliantly at the club.
Yeah. How do you manage to not get little cliques of groups happening then? So how do you know, the racers not talking to the cruisers, or the youth group not being involved with the sailability group? You know, does having so many things help benefit that? Because even a small club that's got cruising and racing will struggle with cliques, and I wonder if there's any advice there. Yeah, I mean, as the management committee and as Commodore, you've got to keep an eye open for any problems there. But the fact is that you know, some of our cruiser owners that are storing their boats in the dinghy park, because we moved some of the dinghies out for the winter, have also got a dinghy in the dinghy park. So they cover both things. And I'm thinking back to, it was back in February. My wife and I went down to the club one Sunday lunchtime and walked into the club. I didn't know what to expect because I wasn't sure what was going on. And the downstairs room had a youth junior training program on, so there were people in there. So you walked up the stairs, you get to the top of the stairs, and to your left we've got a committee room that was full of people finding out how they were going to get lost on using charts and working their way on the navigation front and enjoying that. Then you go into the main club room, the bar. At one end of there's a restaurant area. People are enjoying Sunday lunch. The screen was already down because it was one of the Six Nations matches. So you had a whole. You could go down to the club on a miserable winter Sunday in February, go and do some navigation coursework, then go and have Sunday lunch, and then watch the rugby with your mates. Yeah, well, my next question was going to be kind of why don't you struggle with renewals? But I think you just answered it. You know, because if you're that engaged in a club and there's that many activities, it's really obvious why people renew. And that matters whatever size of club you are. Because, you know, we mentioned earlier you're a largest club with kind of over 1,000 members, but 14% of any membership churn is membership churn, you know, whether that's large or small. And you'd have to bring in so many new members if you weren't keeping your current members engaged and satisfied. I think you've proved to us what a fantastic job X are doing there, and hopefully given some food for thought to other clubs as to some of the things you can do that are a bit more outside the box. You know, we've had some great examples there. Last week we had the examples of the hot tubs for keeping people satisfied, and a club that put hot tubs on their veranda. So, you know, there are lots of reasons to think outside the box that can really engage your members. Mike, thank you so much for your time this evening. Thank you. Great stuff. Okay, so next up we're coming on to Lisa, who's going to give us a bit of a recap from this evening.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Mike Breakfast Club, I'm all for that. Keen on getting involved. I think listening to the case studies and over the past weeks that we've been involved in the webinars, it just shows how similar and different our clubs are. And I think just taking little snippets from these case studies that what you could bring back to your club, whether it's kind of taking the whole idea or just thinking, oh, this bit will work so well with our club, bring that back to your club and kind of use those case studies and experiences and try them out at your club. Going through just a short recap, Friday, it's just not sticking with the norm. It can do wonders, and again, it's just that trying. If you don't try, you won't know whether it works or not works. So kind of put in a little bit of effort to adapt to kind of what is happening currently and move into the future. Like the case study from Gordon, we're looking at investing in your volunteers. They are key in keeping clubs running and kind of offering those different types of experiences for members. Look at your volunteer journey. If there's an opportunity to do an audit, what types of specific recruitment do you need? I know one of the questions last week was in terms of growing kind of younger volunteers. Asking people to volunteer, it's not enough. You have to kind of delve in deeper to kind of say, we would love a social media person to put 1 or 2 posts up a week, or kind of, especially now that membership renewals is coming up, is there kind of volunteers that will help support your membership secretary? Diversity creates multiple opportunities, so we've seen that with Mike's case study, and also from Steve and Sue, in terms of changing and adapting. It'll create multiple opportunities. It will keep people engaged and your members engaged, and it'll become harder for them to disengage from the club as well. And it happens across the whole club. As I said before, every member is different in terms of their needs and their wants, but listen to your members and having that welcoming atmosphere, like Lara explained, just that little hello and kind of communication, and don't assume that members will renew. Keep kind of asking them the questions, making them feel part of the club, and bringing everyone together. I think we're kind of learning that the clubs are more of a hub. We're bringing everyone in, and we're allowing them to kind of create this fantastic club for all. And last but not least, probably one of the most important thing is communication is key. There's so many ways of communicating with your members. Use them all. Yeah, I'm going to pass you on to Rob.
Well, thanks, Lisa, and thanks for leading so nicely into communication, which is next week's topic. So we've looked at how we engage our members. We've looked at what a satisfied member is and what members see as important to their satisfaction. But what's important now is how we communicate that to our membership. So how are you going to communicate with your membership? How are you going to let them know the true value of their membership? Especially for all these clubs that are putting extra bits and bobs on, how do you let the members know that? But what's also important is what process you do that in run up to your renewals. The chart on the right shows that renewals across the country generally happen between January and April. So what are we doing in the run up to that? Or if yours are in October, where there's that little peak a little bit further along in the autumn, what are you doing in the run up to the renewal period by way of communicating? Are you just sending an invoice out, or is there some carrot as well as some stick? So have a think about that before next week. Also, if you could have a think about your club newsletter, how that works. Does it work? Do you know if it works? As well as the social media, what reach does that have? And if you have any kind of comms plan in a run up to renewal, or is there just an invoice going out? So I think that's really important to have a look at for next week. And other than that, that is us done for this evening. I'd like to say a massive thank you to Lisa and Vicky. It's been a great team to work on getting tonight ready, but more so to the 4 case studies that we've spoken to. So those 5 panelists that have helped us out this evening, thank you so much for your time. And also to the audience, thanks very much for listening. There has been a comment that people might want to have a moment to think of some questions and come back to us. So if that's what you'd like to do, we'll stay on air as panelists now, so you can ping us some questions, absolutely no problem. But if not, we'll see you same time, same place next week. Thanks very much, everyone.